Yeah. Colorado Springs pay Cameron $41,000 after First Amendment audit of the police. I think if you want to defend the First Amendment and want to test the First Amendment, then that should be the reason that you do this. If you do this to get sued and to get 41,000, yeah, why shouldn't I? I go there, I sue, I get 41,000. Thank you. I've got my salary for 1 year, and next year I'll be back and do it again with some other cop. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. This is US History Through Dutch Eyes. I'm Joanne, and I'm a typical Dutchman. And I often wonder, why is there such a great gap between the understanding of America and Europe or the Netherlands? And by diving into US history and the things around US history, I try to find out where this gap is coming from and where I can make things a bit smaller or the understanding a bit bigger. So if you want to help me in doing this to close the gap of misunderstanding between US and Europe, then like, subscribe, and help me closing this gap. And in this series, for now, we are still talking about the Constitution and the First Amendment. And the last videos, I was diving into the First Amendment and how this is used and the differences in how we look at it in Europe and how it's handled in America. But what I was missing is the fact that, and you'll see it already, is those First Amendment auditors. I've seen many videos of them, and they claim that they are doing the things they're doing protected by the First Amendment. And after the last two videos I've seen, I cannot connect the rules that are there for the First Amendment that I saw versus what these First Amendment auditors are doing. So I'm falling back to the channel of Legal Eagle, a great channel, and I already subscribed. I liked the video, and maybe he can tell me what to do with this part of the First Amendment. Are they right or are they wrong? Are they always right or are they mostly wrong? I want to know, and if you want to know together with me, then stay around. Let's dive into it.
Being on camera, which is why First Amendment auditors
Back to the
cops
stuff.
love getting videotaped. They'll never admit it, but they secretly love being on camera. Which is why First Amendment auditors are universally loved throughout the country. It's not controversial at all. Now, the introduction of smartphones has revolutionized citizens' ability to document the misconduct of police officers and public officials in real time. And with the advent of social media, these videos that shine a light on police brutality, such as Eric Garner, Walter Scott, and George Floyd, can go viral, bringing instant attention to the film's subjects and even fame to the photographer. And fun fact, before the advent of smartphones, police never infringed on anyone's First Amendment rights.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said in the intro, there are thousands of videos around this First Amendment auditors. And yeah, they do good stuff, but yeah, let's keep on going.
At least according to the police. But in recent years, the filming of police has evolved into a growing social movement and online subculture known as First Amendment audits, where citizens, auditors, film their own encounters with government employees in public spaces to test whether the filmmaker's constitutional rights will be respected or violated.
Yeah, this test is what I'm after. What are they? Is this valid or non-valid? Yeah, let's take a look.
First Amendment auditors cast themselves as patriotic activists and citizen journalists fighting for transparency, accountability, and open government. This is an entire genre on YouTube.
Get somebody to tell you to leave, and then if you don't leave, you'll have to go to jail. Is that what you want?
No, I don't want that.
Then let's move on.
Let's not violate my rights, fellas. Let's go ahead and hop back in your little vehicles and have a nice day.
That's mostly what they do. It's not defending themselves as in, I have my right to be here, or to tell this, or to say this, but they, patronizing the officers with what I say, you don't have respect for the law, but you don't have respect for the person. Go into your little cars and leave. It's not respectful. So they are teasing on purpose.
You're interfering with their drive-through.
No, I'm
you
not.
can say you wasn't, but you were.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
I don't mind you doing that, but they're making the bank people nervous. So if you want to stand down where there's no businesses,
Absolutely not. You're not going to violate my First Amendment rights to free speech
you're
on a
fine,
public
bud.
sidewalk.
You're fine.
We understand that there needs to be law enforcement. People are out there doing bad things. But when you have police officers, deputies, troopers doing the same damn thing as the people in the streets, that is an unsustainable system, man.
But critics argue that First Amendment audits are not about defending the Constitution as much as they are a cynical vehicle for monetizing online outrage and
Yeah, that's
unfairly malign.
my opinion too. They audit, either they do it because they want to have a viral video and get monetized, or they do it to sue the city and get a large amount of money given to them. That's neither works over here in Europe, by the way. But maybe I will come up to it how we do it, because first, freedom of press is not a part of the First Amendment in the Netherlands or in Europe. It's another part of our constitution, but we don't do this much.
Public servants. Many auditors can and do make thousands of dollars per month from their viral confrontations, videos that are often peppered with profanity and other deliberately provocative behavior.
Yes, deliberately provocable behavior. And in the Netherlands, if you do something like this, then you are in violation of somebody's rights. And if you do it to a cop, then you are arrested, you are fined for interfering with the cop's duty. That's their job, and if you're interfering with what they do, they still respect your constitutional rights, but you are getting fined because you're interfering with what they're doing.
So who's right here? Well, it depends. Documenting police and public spaces finds its roots in cop watching, a civil rights era practice in which groups of private citizens patrolled urban communities with cameras to document any police misconduct. But in the mid-2000s, First Amendment auditing began to take shape just as handheld digital and smartphone cameras were becoming widely available. Typically, videos documenting public misconduct have come from citizens who happened to be at the right place at the right time. Such was the case with Darnella Fraser, who at 17 years old recorded Officer Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck for nearly 10 minutes. But what differentiates First Amendment auditors from spontaneous recordings like Fraser's is that auditors deliberately seek out encounters with public officials rather than filming misconduct they just happen to witness. First Amendment auditor Zoe Perez, who goes by the name Furry Potato on YouTube, summed up the goal of auditing as follows, quote, "It's not only about shining a light on the crooked bad cops, but shining an even brighter light on the good cops. You put yourself in places where you know chances are the cops are going to be called. Are they going to uphold the Constitution or break the law? One of the earliest First Amendment audit groups was Photography is Not a Crime, or PINAC, a Florida-based news website and advocacy group which focuses on the right to film police. PINAC was created in 2007 after its founder, veteran photojournalist Carlos Miller, was arrested for photographing a group of 5 Miami police officers conducting a traffic investigation. When the police officers asked Miller to leave and stop filming them, Miller reminded the officers that this was a public road and continued taking photos. Miller claims the officers then threw him to the ground and viciously beat him. The officers arrested Miller and charged him with 9 misdemeanors, including resisting arrest. Miller, who would be arrested 4 times in 7 years for his work, ultimately was acquitted of all charges, including having his 2007 resisting arrest conviction overturned on appeal. In recent years, though, First Amendment auditors don't just film police officers. Rather, they regularly enter state, local, and federal buildings, from libraries to post offices, just to see how government officials react to the camera lens. So what does a traditional First Amendment audit look like? Well, as the Washington Post writes in its purest form, the auditor simply stands in a public space, films, or as is often the case, live streams, the encounter with staff and customers alike, and then refuses to put down the camera or explain or identify themselves if an officer approaches. If there is no confrontation or request to stop filming, the facility passes the audit. But if an employee attempts to stop filming, then the facility fails the audit. That's what First Amendment Auditor Accountability for All did in its 2019 review of the Foxborough Police Department in Massachusetts. Audits like this can be great press for the locality when the public officials respect individual rights, which is what happened in Foxborough. Accountability for All gave the Foxborough PD a glowing review, and it was written about in the local newspaper. Other audits, though, can result in arrests or injury to the auditor. In February 2019, Furry Potato, aka Zoe Perez, was accidentally shot by a security guard during an impromptu First Amendment audit outside a Los Angeles.
Ooh. And why did a YouTuber get shot?
Synagogue. As Perez live streamed the encounter, a synagogue security guard standing behind a gate had his weapon drawn for 4 minutes, yelled at Perez to get away, and then fired a warning into the ground, causing the bullet fragment to strike her in the leg. Prosecutors...
Okay, strike her in the leg, so she survived. I was thinking, wow, somebody get killed, but wounded. Okay.
Declined to file charges, stating that they lack sufficient proof that the security guard used unreasonable force. In this case, it's worth noting that Furry Potato wasn't actually conducting a First Amendment audit per se. The synagogue security guard wasn't a police official or government employee at all. Instead, he was a private contractor. So Furry Potato's First Amendment rights were actually never in question or infringed upon. Even so, audits like this could be valuable for what they tell us about public safety and accountability, certainly more so in and around actual government buildings.
Yeah, because that's part of it that I don't saw in the First Amendment of the Constitution. I guess somewhere else is the freedom of press more defined, but there are press secretaries informing the press. You can see what's going on in the Senate. You can see what's going on in the House. So this is all filmed publicly. So all those public officials are filmed, and it's okay. So when is it not okay?
But let's talk about the legality of First Amendment audits. When is it legal to film public officials?
Okay, that's the answer.
It should come as little surprise that the police do not take kindly to being recorded, despite what the introduction to this video actually said. Now, many police organizations oppose citizens recording them in the course of their duties, claiming that it puts their safety at risk and interferes with active police work. Some officers even tell citizens that filming them is illegal and, like what happened to Mr. Miller of PINAC, will arrest First Amendment auditors while filming.
Yeah. In the Netherlands and in Europe in general, we don't. You get, you have the freedom to film any public servant, most of the time somewhere of the government or the first or second chamber. That's the mostly. It's what when you're filming police officers from a distance, no problem at all. So that's what is allowed. But in the moment you're gonna engage with the police and you're gonna interfere with what they're doing or heckling them, then you probably have a problem. It's not you getting arrested and teased and all I see in all these kinds of videos, but you are getting fined and you have a problem on your day. And you can get a day in court, of course, if you want to. But sue, it's typically a word for the United States. That doesn't happen in Europe. You are protected by the rights, better protected by the rights than in the US, but you are also more bound to the legal rights that the police officer has to protect his duties, to do his job, what he had to do. And main reason that you don't hear this much from Europe versus you hear from the cops from the United States is that we are trained, the cops over here are trained to de-escalate any situation and try to find out together what is the problem. And most of the time when I see this, for those cops that reacting to this First Amendment auditors, is they escalating the situation by raising the voice or even grab a gun or something. That's what's not good.
But is recording the police or public spaces actually illegal? Well, contrary to what this North Carolina police officer told this lawyer during a traffic stop, filming police is not illegal, and you actually do have a First Amendment right to record.
Sir?
Okay, so you do have the First Amendment right to record. It's a lawyer. It's a good lawyer. It's a good lawyer firm. So you do have the right to film a police officer. Okay.
Sir, can you tell me what this new law is that I'm not allowed to record?
I'm sorry?
He said that there's a law I'm not allowed to record the police. I just wanted to know what that new law is.
Well, you said you were an attorney, correct?
I am. I've never heard of this law that you're not allowed to record the police anymore. It must be brand new.
Okay, well, they just recently passed it, so...
Like super recently? Seems like a strange law.
By the way, I know that finding a great lawyer can be really hard, but that's until now. My firm, the Eagle Team, is now accepting new clients. If you've been injured or just need a lawyer, we can represent you or help you find the right attorney. Because you don't need a legal team, you need the Eagle Team. Just check out the link in the description for that. And now back to First Amendment auditors. Oh boy.
I don't hope that you need a lawyer, but I will leave a link in the description to the original video. You can find this channel if you actually need a lawyer to do this. I believe he's for car accidents and identity theft and accidents at work, I believe.
And while the Supreme Court has not directly ruled on this matter, federal appellate courts in the 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th circuits have upheld the right to record public officials in the course of their duties. The primary rationale for allowing the recording of public officials is the First Amendment audit right to freely discuss our government and the people's right to access information about their officials' public activities.
You can film it because you have the right to discuss it and to create data to discuss about. Am I correct?
Primary rationale for allowing the recording of public officials is the First Amendment audit right to freely discuss our government and the people's right to access information about their officials' public activities.
Yeah, the information about what is a cop doing. Yeah.
In the case of Smith versus City of Cumming, the 11th Circuit articulated the reasoning, writing, quote, "The First Amendment protects the right to gather information about what public officials do on public property, and specifically a right to record matters of public interest."
Yeah, so I did not see this in my earlier video that we talked about the First Amendment, but yeah, that's only because it's, of course, compacted. So the First Amendment protects the right to gather information about what public officials do on public property, and specifically a right to record matters of public interest. So this has nothing to do, of course, it has something to do with police brutality most of the times, but the right is there to film.
Courts have also upheld filming public officials on the grounds that freedom of the press applies to citizen journalists and documentarians just as much as it does the formal members of the press, especially since more and more news is actually being gathered and disseminated by citizens with smartphones. This was the Seventh Circuit's logic in the ACLU versus Alvarez, reasoning that private citizens' right to make, quote, an audio or audiovisual recording, and then their, quote, right to disseminate the resulting recording of police officers performing their public duties falls under the First Amendment protection of gathering news and information, particularly about the affairs of the government. However, that's not always the case in all circumstances. Now, the great weight of case law clearly supports the First Amendment right to record public officials in the course of their duties in a way that doesn't interfere with those duties. However,
Yeah, as long as it does not interfere with their duties. That's the same right here. In Europe, it's the same right. You can film any action that's going on as long as you don't interfere with what they are doing.
First Amendment rights are not unlimited, and there are instances where recording could violate the law. Courts upholding the right to record have also held that police may reasonably restrict some First Amendment rights, according to what's generally called a time, place, and manner restrictions. Examples of time, place, and manner restrictions include imposing limits on the noise level of speech, barring early morning or late night protests, or restricting the size or placement of signs on government property. Generally, these are content-neutral restrictions, that they're not punishing any particular kind of speech, they are just limiting the time, place, and manner of the speech or the recording.
Do we have the same? Time, manner of the speech. You need to have a permit to have a legal demonstration, massive gathering of people to demonstrate against something. Also, if you don't have, it's still in your right to do so, but no, it's not specific that you can do the loudness, or what did he say? The time, the place, and the manner. Time, place, and manner. No, it's not restricted. And the first, and not the first law, but by the grant, but by the Constitution. And freedom of press is also not this apply to. No, it's not.
Or restricting.
No.
Are just limiting the time, place, and manner of the speech or the recording. For example, in Garrick versus Began, the First Circuit Court of Appeals, while acknowledging the right to film a traffic stop, also held that reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on the right to film may be imposed when the circumstances justify them. In the context of First Amendment auditors, police officers might curb the right to film, quote, only if the officer can reasonably conclude that the filming itself is interfering or is about to interfere with his duties. Per Garrick, police officers may reasonably limit the right to record to maintain safety and control, with incidental effects on First Amendment rights, such as commanding bystanders to disperse from a traffic stop when a detained individual is armed. Police officers might also be able to arrest auditors who commit crimes during recording, such as disorderly conduct, stalking, trespass, or harassment. In fact, in April 2021,
yeah, that's the same right over here. Like I said, if you do something that interfere with their duties, you're cooked.
Texas First Amendment auditors Joey Perez and Paul Estrada IV were arrested in connection with two separate auditing incidents. According to the police, and bear in mind this is coming from the police, the pair had a history of inserting themselves into active police scenes, getting in close proximity to police and their vehicles, standing in roadways, and shining lights from their cameras in the eyes of the police officers. And some auditors regularly scream profanity at police officers in a provocative way, and have otherwise engaged in activity that has caused some to be successfully prosecuted for disorderly conduct. In 2019, Jesus Padilla, known as Mexican Padilla on YouTube, was convicted on 3 counts of disorderly conduct following an incident in which he followed 3 San Antonio SWAT officers leaving a police station and bombarding them with profanity and homophobic slurs. Padilla contends that
Again, freedom of speech versus what I said yesterday, freedom of expression, as in no hate speech. The borderline is there if you're gonna be not friendly, not respectful to your fellow human being, cop or no cop, you are in violation of the law.
That cursing, which he does in many of his videos, is constitutionally protected since he did not threaten any violence. In fact, courts have long held that profane language is constitutionally protected speech. In the famous case of Cohen versus California, the Supreme Court overturned a man's breach of the peace conviction after he was arrested for wearing a jacket reading "fuck the draft" in a Los Angeles courtroom. And in 2015, the Washington Supreme Court reversed a teenager's conviction for obstructing law enforcement for yelling, calling Seattle police officers abusive names, and using profanity while the officers investigated a disturbance, which has all led to criticism of First Amendment audits. In recent years, First Amendment audits have expanded into its own social media subculture, with self-appointed auditors live streaming their public encounters on YouTube and Instagram. To critics, these auditors are not standing up for constitutional rights as much as they are interfering with police officers, harassing public employees, and purposefully picking fights for clicks and cash. In a June 2021 video shared with tens of thousands of followers, 32-year-old Sean Paul Reyes, aka Long Island Audit, filmed at a public library even though it was unauthorized to film at the library due to purported privacy reasons. In the video, Reyes refused to budge, prompting a confrontation with Danbury police, and shouts,
"Dude, why you gotta be such a tyrant?
You gotta be such a tyrant."
And there are plenty of auditors like Reyes who relish in confrontational tactics to elicit a reaction from their subjects. This includes berating subjects with profane language, being intentionally rude and uncooperative when questioned, or engaging in borderline harassment or intimidation, like openly carrying firearms in public buildings.
Policemen walking in public with an AR-15 to promote Second Amendment rights. Okay, I'm not that far yet that I'm going to take a look at the Second Amendment rights, but man, not a policeman, police. Okay, man walking in public with an AR-15 to promote Second Amendment rights. Yeah, that's not done in the Netherlands or in Europe, because you're not allowed to bear arms in this way, and especially not this kind of gun that he's, of rifle that he has with him. And I did have, not no longer, but I did have a gun on my own, so.
Borderline harassment or intimidation, like openly carrying firearms in public buildings. Now, many public officials do acknowledge the right to film, if for no other reason that sometimes First Amendment auditors are able to launch successful lawsuits against state and public officials.
Yeah. Colorado Springs pay cameraman $41,000 after First Amendment audit of the police. I think if you want to defend the First Amendment and want to test the First Amendment, then that should be the reason that you do this. If you do this to get sued and to get $41,000, yeah, why shouldn't I? I go there, I sue, I get $41,000, thank you. I've got my salary for 1 year, and next year I'll be back and do it again with some other cop. That's not the right way to do it.
For infringing their First Amendment rights. And as a result, some state governments and police organizations issue guidance on how to respectfully deal with First Amendment auditors, as to avoid having to pay large settlements to auditors.
Yeah.
Other public officials have found, let's say, creative and improper ways to try to limit public filming. For example, some public officials have adopted a tactic of playing copyrighted songs in an effort to cause live streaming videos to get automatically blocked by Instagram or YouTube. For example, in 2021, First Amendment auditor Senate Devermont, who runs the Instagram account Always Film the Police, live streamed himself delivering a FOIA request to the Beverly Hills Police Department. However, in 2 separate encounters, a sergeant pulled out his phone to blast Sublime's Santa Rita while being filmed, seemingly aware of what he was doing. And while that police officer may not practice Santeria, he appeared to have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
Other police officers made headlines when they blasted Taylor Swift during an arrest. Other localities have instituted time, place, and manner restrictions. In 2020, the city of Tucson, Arizona, passed an ordinance allowing officers to designate a restricted area around a crime scene within which it is illegal to knowingly interfere with law enforcement in the course of their official duties. The ordinance was enacted in response to footage showing a First Amendment auditor berating a female Tucson officer with several minutes of uninterrupted profanities and gendered slurs during a traffic stop. According to the chief of police, the traffic stop in the viral video involved a car full of robbery suspects, and the ordinance sought to prevent auditors from interfering with police work. 2 years later, the Arizona State House passed a bill making it illegal to film police officers within 8 feet, reduced from the original proposal of 15 feet. The bill allowed recording if the individual recording is at the center of police contact or is an occupant in a stopped vehicle, so long as they don't interfere with the police action. But according to one local Arizona radio station, the bill would have made the George Floyd bystander video a crime. So this raises the question, are First Amendment auditors constitutional warriors spurring real change or trolls out for profit? Critics
Yeah, my question exactly.
can point to countless examples of First Amendment auditors who appear to be motivated by fame or clicks or cash rather than the Constitution. Even among those sympathetic to the movement, it's hard to see how harassing patrons at post offices and public libraries or filming outside a synagogue serves any purpose beyond attempting to go viral. But auditors are not a monolith, and there's countless individuals auditing organizations who do good work. Thanks to the educational efforts and legal advocacy of groups like PINAC, the ACLU, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, or FIRE, the public is well aware of their constitutional rights to film in public. And although federal efforts at police reform have arguably stalled, advocates can point to real policy change at the state and local levels thanks to bystander and audit videos. And who knows how many untold instances of police misconduct have been documented thanks to people with cell phone cameras. So seriously, it depends. But it's only a matter of time before another First Amendment auditor ends up in the news again, which is perfect for today's sponsor, Ground News. Over the past decade, online news and ad-driven algorithms have made it profitable for news outlets to embrace a position on the bias spectrum to target specific consumers. But Ground News was created to offer clarity in an increasingly chaotic media landscape by adding context and transparency to every news story using a rating system, and gives you a visual breakdown of the news sources covering.
Good. So it's not clear at all for now if they are right or wrong. It's made me clear by this video that they are in their right to do so as long as they do not interfere with the duties of the cop and do not harass or insult or be disrespectful to the person that they are filming, a cop or a civil servant. That's the same that we do right here in the Netherlands or in Europe, that you can film, you can document what people do, what civil servants do, what cops do, as long as you don't interfere with their duties and as long as you keep them, respect them as another human being doing his job without profanity or anything else saying to him, because then you are in violation of the First Amendment, of the freedom of interference, I will say, but it's the freedom of speech and the freedom. Damn. Twenty times I told it. We have freedom of speech, and we are talking about the freedom of expression. Yes. So then you are having a problem if you do this, because then not even your freedom of expression can be your savior, and you will be fined. Not drag off in handcuffs or chased or on gunpoint, but you will get a fine. You will need to pay. If you learned something today about US First Amendment or about the Europe, then like and subscribe so that we can make this gap smaller and smaller. It will help me a lot if you do so. So subscribe would be nice. And if you have any comments, please, I respond to all the comments. So leave a comment. What do you think about this? See you guys in the next video.